Muslims say Imam Bukhari collected 600,000 hadith, but does the math add up? The hadith are reports of the sayings and actions of Islam's prophet. Imam Bukhari, who lived in the 9th century, is one of the most famous hadith collectors in history. His multi-volume work, Sahih al-Bukhari, is regarded by Sunni Muslims as the most authentic collection of hadith. It's said that over the course of 16 years, Bukhari examined around 600,000 hadith narrations and selected only about 7,000 for his collection. Because of his collection's importance, it's worth asking, do those numbers really make sense? Can one man have gathered that many hadith narrations? If Imam al-Bukhari truly examined 600,000 narrations over the course of 16 years, that works out to about 103 narrations every single day without fail. Is that a plausible daily workload sustained for years? That would only allow about 14 minutes per hadith. And that figure comes before accounting for things like sleep, travel, meals, or time to think even. And this is assuming he worked 24/7. Obviously, no one works 24 hours a day, so let's think in more realistic terms. If al-Bukhari slept about 7 hours each night, that would leave him with 17 hours. Subtract 2 more for meals and hygiene, and we're at 15. Take away 3 hours for traveling, writing, and teaching, and that leaves 12. 1 more for prayer brings it to 11, another hour for rest and transitions between tasks reduces it to 10, and if we allow just a single hour for community and social life, that leaves only 9 hours a day devoted to hadith. With those 9 hours, the math works out to roughly 5 minutes per narration across 16 years, and even that is far too generous, considering how demanding travel and investigation really were. To demonstrate just how unrealistic this is, those 5.3 minutes per hadith would have to include listening to the transmitter, writing the hadith down, investigating the reliability of the narrators, and assessing the authenticity of the content itself. It assumes no time off for sickness, no interruptions, no time off at all, almost as if Bukhari functioned like a machine, which shows just how unrealistic the numbers really are. Even repeated hadith narrations take time to assess. Every chain of transmission still has to be read, every narrator still has to be evaluated, every content line has to be noted, every report has to be cross-checked, and then another one. It's just impossible. Bukhari moved widely across the Islamic world to gather hadith, and in that era, travel meant caravans and camels, journeys that took weeks, not hours. Even if that wasn't every single day, once you factor in the time lost on the road, the daily average shrinks further. Now we're talking about maybe a minute and a half for each narration. That's barely enough to skim, let alone verify. When you do the math, the story just doesn't work. Even if some hadith were repeats, the amount of checking needed is way too much for one person. It's honestly way too much for multiple people. There just aren't enough hours in a lifetime to collect and verify that many. But wait, some Muslims actually argue that Bukhari didn't just spend 16 years collecting hadith, but that he collected it over the course of his whole life. So let's test that. Suppose we give him 50 full years, working 9 hours a day without fail since the age of 10. That would still only give him about 16 minutes for each narration. But if we're being honest, no human being works like a machine for 50 years straight. Once you account for sickness, travel, interruptions, and simply living a human life, that number drops to closer to 8 minutes per narration. And even at 16 minutes, it's still far too little time. In an attempt to address this, some Muslims have pointed to Bukhari's extraordinary memory, as if that explains everything. But memory alone doesn't solve the problem. Verification still takes time, reasoning still takes time, writing and travel take time. An amazing memory might speed up reading, but it just can't shrink the hours needed for scholarship. Can a child at that age really verify chains of transmission or critically assess the reliability of narrators? Memorization is one thing, but scholarly judgment is another, and that requires maturity and experience. So even under the most generous assumptions, each hadith still demands more than a few minutes of verification. Multiply that by hundreds of thousands, and the hours required absolutely exceed human capacity. The numbers just don't add up. It's like trying to mop up the ocean, an endless task that no human being could realistically complete. So how do we make sense of this? Option 1, believe that Bukhari really did collect that many hadith narrations, and at a pace that makes him sound more like a superhero than a human being. Option 2, say that it's an exaggeration. And then there's option 3, At some point, somebody made this up. Of course, if it's a lie, you should also wonder what else about the Hadith collection is invented or exaggerated. Since Muslim sources always take option 1 and present the 600,000 number as fact, if that's clearly made up, what else should we be second guessing?